From Don Alejo, who killed 6 and injured several other Los Zetas cartel members while defending his ranch, to Miriam Rodriguez, who personally tracked down and handed over 10 cartel members to the police. In this video, I will take you through 10 individuals who exerted brutal revenge on cartel members. Don Alejo. In the rugged heart of Tamaulipas, Don Alejo Garza Tamez dedicated his days to cultivating his ranch into a thriving agricultural sanctuary. His life embodied hard work and resilience, striving for a peaceful existence in an increasingly violent world. However, by the 1980s and 1990s, Mexico was undergoing significant changes as drug cartels rose to power, ushering in an era marked by impunity and widespread violence. Tamaulipas, once a region of safety and prosperity, became fraught with danger. Roads that once led to bustling markets now told stories of robberies and kidnappings. Farmers and ranchers found themselves entangled in the growing influence of the cartels, who began extending their control into rural areas. They demanded protection fees from farmers, a grim form of extortion. Those who refused to pay faced serious threats, leaving many feeling helpless against the cartel's relentless advance. Don Alejo, a principled and far-sighted man, refused to give in to these threats. He had heard from fellow farmers about the cartel's tactics. They would demand protection fees to shield farmers from their own violence. The irony was clear to Don Alejo, who had spent his life building a livelihood based on honesty and hard work. The notion of surrendering his hard-earned land to these criminals was unimaginable. The situation escalated when the cartel issued an ultimatum. Don Alejo had 24 hours to abandon his land. For the cartel, this was standard procedure. They expected the 77-year-old man to flee in fear, but Don Alejo was far from ordinary. His resolve was unshakable. He would stand his ground and fight. Recognizing that the police were often compromised by cartel influence, Don Alejo knew he was on his own. He fortified his ranch, drawing on his hunting skills and a secret stash of rifles. His years of practice as a marksman would serve him well, as he planned to make every shot count. Don Alejo sent his workers home, insisting they remove livestock and valuables. His trusted friend, Joaquin Estrada, was the last to leave. Don Alejo's final words to Joaquin were a heartfelt farewell, urging him to cherish his family. That night, the cartel arrived with their usual bravado, honking horns, flashing lights, and firing into the air. But instead of easy prey, they encountered fierce resistance. Don Alejo, using his knowledge of the terrain, engaged them in a battle. From his fortified home, Don Alejo unleashed precise shots, taking down cartel members one by one. Surprised by the intensity of his defense, the cartel found themselves outmaneuvered by a single man. Despite his relentless efforts, the cartel ultimately used grenades, overwhelming Don Alejo's defenses. When the Mexican Marines arrived, they found evidence of a fierce battle. 4 cartel members lay dead outside, a testament to Don Alejo's stand. Inside, they found Don Alejo, who had defended his land to the very end. Just like Don Alejo, the next person on our list was also a one-man, or should I say one-woman army. Miriam Rodriguez.
De los reos secuestradores, hubo una fuga masiva de reos, todos sabemos. Debido a en esa fuga masiva se fugan 2 reos de los secuestradores de mi hija. Uno fue recapturado, pero uno aún sigue libre.
In the city of San Fernando, Mexico, a mother's relentless pursuit of justice became legendary. Miriam Rodriguez, armed only with determination and a pistol, embarked on a crusade against the powerful Zeta cartel to avenge her daughter, Karen. Kidnapped and murdered at the age of 20 in 2014, Karen's disappearance ignited a fire in her mother that would not be extinguished until she had hunted down nearly every person involved in her daughter's abduction and murder. Miriam's journey into the dark world of cartel violence began with the disappearance of Karen. After paying a ransom that did not secure her daughter's release, Miriam realized that the authorities were either unwilling or unable to help. Determined to find those responsible, she launched her own investigation. Disguised in various costumes, a health worker, a pollster, an election official, Miriam collected crucial information about the perpetrators. She befriended unwitting relatives and ingratiated herself with their families, gathering clues and tips with the patience of a seasoned detective. Her tenacity paid off. Over the years, Miriam captured nearly every member of the gang responsible for Karen's kidnapping, single-handedly dismantling the group. Among the criminals she brought to justice was a florist, once part of the cartel, whom she tracked for over a year. When she finally cornered him on a bridge to Texas, Miriam didn't hesitate. She held him at gunpoint for nearly an hour until the police arrived to arrest him. Miriam's success was not without risk. In 2017, after bringing 10 people to justice, Miriam became a target herself. On Mother's Day that year, she was shot and killed in front of her home. Her assassination highlighted the pervasive impunity and violence violence in Mexico, where individuals challenging the status quo often face deadly repercussions. Despite her fears, Miriam's courage had inspired her community, showcasing the power and perseverance of one grieving mother. San Fernando, scarred by violence and cartel rule, found hope in Miriam's actions. She became a symbol of resilience in a country where many felt abandoned by the government. Her death was a stark reminder of the dangers faced by those who dared to confront organized crime. Nevertheless, her legacy lived on, inspiring others to continue the fight against injustice. In the wake of Miriam's death, her son Luis took up her mantle, leading a collective of families searching for their missing loved ones. The government promised to bring her killers to justice, and the city of San Fernando erected a bronze plaque in her honor, a testament to her bravery and relentless pursuit of justice. The next person on our list also showed his relentless pursuit of justice: José Manuel Mireles Valverde. José Manuel Mireles Valverde was born on October 24, 1958, in Michoacán, Mexico, a region known for its beauty but also for its poverty and limited access to essential services. Growing up in such an environment fostered in Mireles a strong sense of duty and compassion, driving him to pursue a career in medicine. He became a dedicated medical surgeon, committed to providing care to those in need. In 1988, Mireles faced controversy when media outlets reported his imprisonment for producing marijuana. Mireles denied these charges, asserting that his imprisonment was due to practicing medicine without a state license in Michoacán. After his release, he traveled to the United States, where he became involved in social activism, advocating for marginalized communities. Returning to Mexico, Mireles entered politics, running for the Senate in 2006, but his political aspirations did not materialize. However, the rise of the Knights Templar cartel in Michoacán dramatically changed his life. The cartel's reign of terror, marked by kidnappings, extortion, and murders, devastated the region. Mireles himself was kidnapped, and several of his family members were murdered by the cartel. In 2013, driven by a desire to protect his community, Mireles became a key figure in the autodefensas, self-defense militias formed by ordinary citizens to combat the Knights Templar cartel. Under his leadership, the autodefensas conducted daring operations against the cartel, dismantling criminal networks and restoring a sense of security to their communities. However, the government viewed the autodefensas as a threat and sought to disarm them. In 2014, Mireles was arrested for violating Mexico's firearms laws just after accusing the president of involvement in Michoacán's irregularities. Despite his imprisonment, Mireles continued to communicate his message, defending the actions of the self-defense groups. In 2016, Mireles issued a public apology to the government and his family for any disrespect he may have shown towards official institutions. Different people fight the cartel differently. Some people take up arms, while others fight the cartel using their words, just like the next person on our list did. Javier Valdez. Javier Valdez Cardenas was born on April 14, 1967, in Culiacán, Sinaloa, Mexico. From an early age, Valdez displayed a passion for storytelling and a keen interest in the social and political dynamics that shaped his homeland. His upbringing in Sinaloa, a region known for its rich culture and turbulent history with drug cartels, profoundly influenced his career as a journalist. Valdez pursued a degree in sociology, which equipped him with a deep understanding of the complex issues facing Mexico. He soon gravitated toward journalism as a way to shed light on the realities that many preferred to ignore. In 1998, he co-founded the weekly newspaper Rio Doce in Culiacán, which became known for its fearless reporting on drug trafficking and organized crime. Valdez also worked as a correspondent for the national newspaper La Jornada, where he gained recognition for his in-depth reporting on the drug war. Throughout his career, Valdez focused on the human impact of drug violence, emphasizing the stories of victims and their families. His work highlighted the devastating effects of the drug trade on communities, from forced disappearances to the daily terror faced by ordinary citizens. Valdez believed in giving a voice to the voiceless, often at great personal risk. In addition to his newspaper work, Valdez authored several books on the subject of drug cartels and their influence in Mexico. His most notable works included Miss Narco, which explored the lives of women involved in the drug trade, and The Kids of the Drug Trade, which examined how young people were drawn into the violent world of narco-trafficking. Valdez's writing was characterized by its clarity and empathy, capturing the complexities of a society gripped by fear and corruption. Despite the dangers associated with reporting on drug cartels, Valdez remained remained committed to his mission. He was well aware of the risks, but believed that silence was not an option. Valdez often spoke out about the threats journalists faced in Mexico, a country that had become one of the most dangerous places in the world for reporters. He criticized the government's failure to protect journalists and its complicity in allowing violence to flourish. On May 15, 2017, Javier Valdez Cárdenas paid the ultimate price for his courage and dedication to truth. As he left the Rio Doce office in Culiacán, he was ambushed by gunmen who shot him multiple times in broad daylight. Valdez's assassination sent shockwaves through the journalism community and beyond, serving as a stark reminder of the perils faced by those who dared to report on organized crime. Valdez's murder was widely condemned both nationally and internationally. Journalists, human rights organizations, and public figures called for justice and greater protection for reporters in Mexico. His death highlighted the urgent need to address the culture of impunity that allowed such attacks to occur with alarming frequency. In the aftermath of his death, Valdez's colleagues at Rio Doce vowed to continue their work, undeterred by the violence that had claimed their co-founder. Valdez's legacy as a fearless journalist and advocate for truth endures, inspiring others to carry on the fight for justice and accountability. Javier Valdez Cárdenas is remembered as a journalist who gave a voice to the voiceless and stood up against the powerful forces that sought to silence him. His work remains a testament to the vital role of journalism in holding power to account and shining a light on the darkest corners of society. Despite the risks, Valdez believed in the power of the pen to drive change, and his life and career continue to inspire those who strive to make the world a better, safer place for everyone. As we have seen in this video, it is not only men who have taken their stands, but also women have, just like the next person on our list. Nestora Salgado. Nestora Salgado, a Seattle woman and former militia leader, walked out of a Mexican prison on a Friday, surrounded by supporters and members of the community police she once commanded. Her release came after kidnapping charges against her were dismissed, marking the end of a high-profile case that had captured international attention. Salgado's story is one of courage and resilience. Born in Olinala, a mountainous village in the southern state of Guerrero, she moved to the Seattle area at the age of 20. In the United States, she worked a series of menial jobs, sending money back to her family in Mexico. Salgado eventually became a U.S. citizen, but her heart remained in Olinala, where she returned in 2012 to fight back against the rampant criminality threatening her hometown. The region of Guerrero, like many parts of Mexico, has long been plagued by drug cartels and criminal groups. These organizations not only traffic drugs, but also engage in kidnapping, extortion, and violence against ordinary citizens, often with the complicity of local police and politicians. In response, residents across Mexico have formed self-defense militias, commonly referred to as community police, to protect their communities where the government has failed. Salgado's journey into community policing began after a taxi driver was murdered for refusing to pay extortion fees. Outraged by the injustice and the government's inaction, she took a leadership role within the community police force, organizing patrols and detentions in a bid to restore order and safety to Olinala. Her efforts brought her widespread recognition and admiration, as well as criticism and accusations of abuse of power. In August 2013, Salgado was detained by Mexican soldiers, accused of kidnapping 3 teenage girls. These girls were reportedly detained by the community police for allegedly dealing drugs on behalf of their cartel-affiliated boyfriends. Salgado and her supporters insisted that her arrest was politically motivated, aimed at undermining the community police movement. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention deemed her arrest arbitrary, noting that the formation of community police forces was permitted under state law. The roots of community policing in Guerrero stretch back 2 decades. These groups were initially formed to combat crimes like sexual assault and robbery, using principles of restorative justice common in indigenous communities. While critics argue that some community police forces have overstepped their bounds, proponents highlight their effectiveness in providing security where the government has failed. This government persecution is coming because it wants to discourage people from organizing, said Father Mario Campos, a Catholic priest who helped form the first community police organization, the regional coordinator of community authorities. Where there's community security, there's much more tranquility. Since Salgado's arrest, security in Guerrero has deteriorated. High-profile crimes, including the kidnapping and presumed murder of 43 teacher trainees in 2014, have highlighted the ongoing violence in the region. This situation has prompted calls for dialogue with organized crime, with Archbishop Carlos Garfias Merlos of Acapulco advocating for a truce during the Holy Week holiday to ensure the safety of tourists and residents. Salgado's case underscores the complex realities facing Mexico, where ordinary citizens citizens often take up arms in the absence of effective law enforcement, her release was celebrated by supporters as a victory for justice and a testament to the power of community action. Yet the challenges facing Guerrero and other parts of Mexico remain daunting, as government and citizens alike grapple with how to restore peace and security in the face of entrenched criminality. Upon her release, Salgado vowed to continue her fight for her community, declaring, "I paid for crimes that I did not commit, and for nothing more than defending my people." Despite the risks, she remains committed to patrolling her hometown and standing up against the forces that threaten its peace. Her resolve is emblematic of the resilience and courage that define the community police movement as ordinary people rise to protect their homes and their futures. While Salgado took a stand and was punished by the government, the next female on the list took a stand in a state where there were literally no available males who would dare the cartel. Marisol Valdez Garcia. Marisol Valdez Garcia, born in 1989 in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, became an unlikely symbol of courage and hope in one of Mexico's most perilous regions. Her journey from criminology student to police chief of Praxedis G. Guerrero, a small town in the northern state of Chihuahua, reflects the immense challenges and dangers faced by those combating drug cartels in Mexico. In 2006, Mexican President Felipe Calderón declared war on the country's powerful drug cartels, igniting a wave of violence that resulted in the deaths of approximately 30,000 people. Among those targeted were government officials, mayors, and police officers, many of whom were brutally murdered. The situation in Praxedis G. Guerrero, once a quiet rural town, had become dire as the Juarez and Sinaloa cartels clashed for control of a critical highway corridor. In October 2010, with the town's police force dwindled to just 3 officers, and following the gruesome murder of the previous police chief, Manuel Castro, Mayor José Luis Guerrero struggled to find someone willing to lead the police department. Despite the obvious dangers, 20-year-old Marisol Valdez Garcia, a criminology student at the University of Guadalajara, stepped forward as the sole applicant for the position. Her appointment as police chief on October 18, 2010, drew international attention, earning her the moniker the bravest woman in Mexico. Valdez Garcia's decision to accept the role was driven by a desire to bring positive change to her community. "We're all afraid in Mexico now. We can't let fear beat us," she declared upon being sworn in. Her approach to policing was unconventional in such a violent context. She intended to recruit more women to the force and focus on community outreach and crime prevention rather than direct confrontation with the cartels. However, her bravery quickly drew the ire of criminal elements. Within 2 weeks of taking office, Valdez Garcia began receiving threatening phone calls from cartel members urging her to work for them. On March 1, 2011, she received a direct threat of kidnapping from a man who had harassed her for months. Realizing the imminent danger, Valdez Garcia and her family fled to the United States, seeking asylum in El Paso, Texas. She has since been granted a work permit and continues to live in the US. Despite being forced into exile, Valdez Garcia remains a figure of resistance against the cartel's tyranny. Her tenure as police chief may have been short-lived, but her courage has left an indelible mark on her community and beyond. Our next story is one of extraordinary courage in the face of unimaginable violence. Maria Santos Gorostieta. Elected as the mayor of Tiquicheo, Michoacán in 2008, Gorostieta entered a role fraught with danger. The region, a stronghold for powerful drug cartels like La Familia Michoacana and the Knights Templar, was notorious for its violence and corruption. Despite the ever-present threats, Gorostieta publicly denounced the cartels, refusing to bow to the fear that silenced so many others. The danger became real just 3 months into her term. In January 2008, Gorostieta and her husband, José Sánchez Chávez, were ambushed while traveling near the rural community of Las Mojaras. The gunmen fired warning shots and threatened her, but she remained undeterred. A year later, the couple was attacked again, this time more violently. On January 16, 2009, they were ambushed in El Limón de Papatzindan, where both sustained minor injuries. The most devastating attack came on October 15, 2009, when they were again ambushed. As her husband stepped out of the vehicle to make a phone call, he was gunned down. Gorostieta rushed to protect him and was shot multiple times herself. Miraculously, she survived, but her husband did not. Even this tragedy couldn't break her spirit. Gorostieta returned to her duties as mayor, her resolve strengthened by the loss. In January 2010, she was attacked yet again, this time in Ciudad Altamirano. Severely wounded with gunshots to her abdomen, chest, and leg, she barely survived. Despite the pain and the need to use a colostomy bag for the rest of her life, she refused to step down. She even posed for photographs showing her scars, declaring, "I wanted to show you my wounded, mutilated, humiliated body because I am not ashamed of it. I am a whole and strong woman." Her term ended in 2011, and she retired from politics, hoping to live a quieter life with her 3 children. However, the cartels had not forgotten her. On November 12, 2012, while driving her daughter to school, she was forced off the road by armed men. In front of witnesses, she was abducted, and her body was found days later. She had been brutally beaten to death. Our next story shows how a president tired of the cartel's influence declared war on them. Felipe Calderón. There is one thing Felipe Calderón's presidency is most notable for, and that is his declaration of war on Mexico's drug cartels, a decision that dramatically altered the landscape of the nation. On December 11, 2006, just days into his term, Calderón launched a military offensive in his home state of Michoacán, deploying 6,500 soldiers in an effort to quell the rising tide of drug-related violence. This bold move is widely regarded as the beginning of Mexico's drug war, a conflict that would consume the country over the next several years. Calderón's strategy was clear. He sought to reassert state control over regions dominated by powerful drug cartels, using the military to confront these organizations head-on. His approach marked a significant departure from the more passive policies of his predecessors, who often turned a blind eye to the cartel's growing power. Calderón's decision to deploy the military was seen as necessary to restore order, but it also opened a Pandora's box of violence and instability. As the conflict escalated, so did the government's involvement. By 2008, Calderón had increased the military presence to around 45,000 troops, supported by state and federal police. His administration achieved early successes by capturing several high-profile cartel leaders, which were intended to dismantle the organizations from the top down. However, these victories had unintended consequences. The power vacuums created by the arrests of cartel leaders led to fierce battles among rival factions, resulting in a surge of violence in key areas like Ciudad Juárez, Tijuana, and Matamoros. The human cost of Calderón's war on drugs was staggering. Violence escalated rapidly, with more than 15,000 people losing their lives in cartel-related attacks by the end of 2008. Each subsequent year saw a rising death toll: 5,000 homicides in 2008, 9,600 in 2009, and over 15,000 in 2010. By the end of Calderón's presidency in 2012, official figures reported around 50,000 drug-related homicides. However, independent estimates suggested the true number could have been as high as 120,000, highlighting the devastating impact of the conflict. While Calderón's military strategy succeeded in capturing key figures and disrupting cartel operations, it also plunged Mexico into a state of pervasive violence and fear. Guzmán López. In July of this year, the world was stunned by the capture of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, one of the most elusive drug lords in history. Speculation swirled about how he fell into the hands of US authorities. Some believed he was tricked, while others speculated that it was an act of revenge for the arrest of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. Central to this theory was the belief that El Chapo's son, Joaquín Guzmán López, played a pivotal role in the betrayal. In a rare and revealing statement, Zambada recounted the dramatic events that led to his capture, a betrayal orchestrated by Guzmán López, the son of his former ally. Zambada explained how he was lured into a trap under the pretense of a routine meeting. The meeting was arranged, with Guzmán López and prominent Sinaloa state officials, including Governor Rubén Rocha and federal lawmaker Héctor Cuen. "I was kidnapped," Zambada stated. He described arriving at a ranch near Culiacán, where he encountered Cuen and then Guzmán López, whom he had known since childhood. Trusting the familiar faces, Zambada followed Guzmán López into what he thought would be a straightforward discussion. But the situation quickly turned sinister. Zambada was led into a dark room, and before he could react, the atmosphere shifted to one of violence. According to him, he was knocked to the ground by a group of men, tied up, and had a hood placed over his head. The men, once allies, now treated him as a captive. He was hauled into the back of a pickup truck and driven to a nearby landing strip where a plane awaited. El Mayo has since pleaded not guilty to racketeering conspiracy, drug conspiracy, and other charges. Hipólito Mora Chávez. In the quiet town of La Ruana, Michoacán, Mexico, the morning calm was abruptly shattered by a convoy of 3 white pickup trucks racing down the road. Though the drivers were unknown, their target was unmistakable: Hipólito Mora, the fearless founder of Mexico's first anti-cartel self-defense brigade. On that fateful day in late June, Hipólito's brother, Guadalupe, spotted the convoy heading toward Hipólito's ranch. Alarmed, he immediately called Hipólito. "A convoy of armed men just entered the town," he warned. government. "I know," replied Hipólito, en route to his ranch in an armored SUV. "Take care," Guadalupe urged before the call ended. Soon after, the ominous sound of gunfire echoed through La Ruana. Hipólito's SUV was ambushed on a dirt road, with assailants unleashing over 100 rounds of 50 caliber bullets. The gunfire struck the SUV's gas tank, igniting a fire. Forced out by the flames, Hipólito was shot and then set on fire by one of the attackers. He died there, marking a tragic end to a life defined by resistance. For many in Michoacán, Hipólito's brutal murder on June 29th signified the end of a civilian uprising that began a decade earlier in the same town. However, for some, it was a call to resist the cartels anew. In 2013, under the brutal regime of the Knights Templar cartel, local farmers led by Hipólito Mora rose in rebellion. This marked the birth of Mexico's first self-defense movement to combat the cartel's violence. Within 10 months, hundreds of armed civilians had driven the Knights Templar out, reclaiming their lands and restoring security. However, by 2017, the movement was co-opted by the government and cartels infiltrated the civilian guards. Hipólito, witnessing the infiltration, withdrew and condemned the cartel's incursion. Among those he accused was Heladio Cisneros, La Sirena, a leader of Los Viagras and alleged mastermind behind Hipólito's murder. Before his death, Hipólito had survived 2 assassination attempts, which he attributed to Los Viagras. That brings us to the end of this story. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.